Welcome, main characters' parents who have always existed, right? To episode 390 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 17th of February, 2021, and featuring Sarah Jane Adventures, The Mark of the Berserker, written by Joseph Lidster, and starring Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, Tommy Knight as Luke Smith, Daniel Anthony as Clyde Langer, Anjali Mohindra as Ronnie Chandra, and Alexander Armstrong as Mr. Smith. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Randy Ronson McCulloch.
My love for you is like a truck berserker.
Mad Matt Winchell.
Nanu.
And Thomas Fireheart.
God, if it's not one thing, it's another. They either have parents, or they have no parents, or their parents have issues.
Well, at least, Ronnie's parents have been there, all this time. So having him there was fine. Now we've suddenly got everybody's parents.
Yep. It just kind of stood out to me that we saw Maria's parents pretty much all season. We've seen Ronnie's parents pretty much all season. This was the first appearance of Clyde's mother.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And his deadbeat dad.
Yep.
Yeah, his deadbeat dad showed up in the same episode. Oh, okay.
I noticed the pattern with that too.
Should we save this for the discussion?
We should be, yes.
Probably.
Wow, it's amazing that we're already getting to talking about the episode.
It tells you how much more interesting the episode is this week.
I didn't want to leave Thomas's comment hanging.
All right,
so getting right to the news then.
How's the week been for everybody?
Not too bad. I mean, it was kind of funny because I worked Saturday through Tuesday, but then even like yesterday, I still doing shit around the house because we're finally getting around to properly cleaning out the granny flat out the back ahead of it being painted next week because I've got Monday to Friday off next week. So like, even though I would only be working Tuesday and Thursday, I've just asked for like clean slate for that because we're going to be repainting it and then I'll be moving in next week. So it's like it's taken for fucking ever to happen, but thankfully it is getting very close.
All right, Bill, how's the deep freeze been treating you?
I haven't been bad because I'm still north enough that it's not really anything special. I've definitely been checking in with friends and family in Texas to make sure that they're doing all right.
I was going to say Texas is under like 3 inches of snow.
Yeah, actually, I need to check in with somebody again because they're in Houston, and apparently Houston is having trouble with its water supply. And last I saw was them saying that their water had just cut out. So that I should probably check in on again.
Yeah, that's because Texas utilities aren't built for any of this.
Well,
there are places where power and heat are out because.
So the thing is, Texas deregulated and privatized their power infrastructure.
I'm aware of that.
And when that happens, what you don't have redundancy in the case of emergencies. So all of the regular maintenance that would have kept it running, they were just like, it's cheaper not to do that maintenance. So shit started breaking down when it actually got stressed by the weather.
Yep, but no power means in many cases no heat. And we have a friend over on another Discord channel who's down in Texas, and he can't go into work because his work has no heat, no power.
Mm-hmm.
But at least he's saying safe. Meanwhile, I've been seeing people making comments on videos from Texas going, "How do you people in the north live through this? Are you polar bears or penguins or something? What is this madness? I don't even want to go outside. This is crazy."
I haven't checked what the temperatures were. I'm thinking my father was in a very mild area because he told me they were getting like the 20s and some snow, and then he never lost power. But in other places, I've seen pictures, and some of the ice in those pictures you don't get when it's 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like 0 degrees Fahrenheit ice.
I believe that friend of ours from another server, he even shared pictures of people apparently trying to wash a car wash. That was a giant oops. Let's just
Yeah,
say it looked like a giant maw of a shark when it was done.
But yeah, there was whichever day it hit, it might have just been yesterday. The days all blur together at this point. But people were all sharing tips of things that everybody north of DC is well familiar with, and everybody more south than that is like, yeah. As you know, in case you're not aware, do not throw hot water on your iced over card to melt the ice. Things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If your pipes haven't burst, run the water a bit at night so that they don't.
So, Matt shared a picture from somebody from a streamer called Gassy Mexican, who is saying, "Yeah, well, my dog's out there loving the snow." I'm like looking at this and going, "Well, yes, that's apparently because you have a husky in Texas."
Yeah.
Wait, I was going to say, like in Mexico, they have a husky. It must be miserable.
No, he's in
Texas,
Texas.
it's gotta be-
Or visiting
Texas,
Texas.
it's got to be bad enough too.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Malcolm
this
is
has to be the first-
actually Malcolm is mostly indoor dog to begin with. He only just goes outside
Okay,
for a
that
little
makes
bit,
sense.
but
So they mostly live in the AC.
yeah.
I was going to say, you bring that dog out, and, you know, this is probably the first time the dog's been outside without suffering heat stroke.
Well, usually when they go out, they Gassy, I guess we'll just call it for sure. That's his usual short for his nickname. He usually goes out for coffee, and he'll bring Malcolm in the car. And while he's in the backseat of the car getting coffee, they'll actually give him a little doggy cone.
Well, yeah, but he still has to go outside and do his business.
Yeah.
Can you imagine going to the bathroom and your bathroom is a blast furnace?
Well, I'm pretty sure you'll get
Yeah.
your job done quick now, won't you?
Hmm.
Well,
It really
I'm not
shows
sure
that
where Jiggly Panda's at, but his dog apparently has been going outside for maybe about a minute, and then coming back going, nope.
Yeah, well, that dog's probably like a Chihuahua or something, where they're made.
I think
they're
he's a
made for
pit
the
bull
sun.
mix.
Well, you know, short-haired dog made for southern climates, where they're like going, nope, nope.
Yeah. I mean, it just shows that Huskies must be able to deal with some degree of heat, but just not Texas heat, because one of my family's next door neighbors has a Husky, and I'm like, this is the hottest state in the country. Why have you got a fucking Husky here?
The only
But I
place
guess
to
it's
be
like
worse is having a
decent-ish.
husky in Death Valley.
Yeah. Matter of fact, actually, our next door neighbors have a husky mix, and I think one of the times we were out shoveling, he was actually running around the yard, just couldn't have enough of it.
Makes sense to have a husky.
Yeah, up here having a husky's not bad. They're only overheated, 2-3 months of the year.
Thereabouts.
Yeah. But having one in there, because snow in Texas is rare. It's like maybe once every 5 years, and they usually only get a dusting then. This kind of snow that they've gotten, I don't think we've seen in like 30, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, it's been a while since Texas has seen snow. I know that they get it, but it's been very seldom. And not at this level, usually.
Yeah. Usually it's what we would call trace. Not even an inch.
A dusting.
Yeah.
In a lot of states, even the ones that get that from time to time, they don't have the infrastructure for that, so it closes down the cities for a day until it melts on the road or whatever happens.
Whereas, now Texas is pretty much declaring a national emergency because they've had snow for about a week now?
About 4 days. 4 or 5 days.
So they're just
I
like,
feel
what
like-
do we do? What do we do?
Yeah, I feel like I saw a thing. I'm pretty sure it was from someone in Texas or something. But there was like a photo or something someone had taken of a fan that had icicles forming on it, and it's like, what the fuck?
Whereas, here in Wisconsin, we open the patio door and, we see the snowdrift, up to our waist, and we're just like, better get out the big snowplow.
Though what I'm noticing here, and apparently like we've been getting a good amount of snow for southern Ohio, is that I almost never see things properly salted, which is why I've been staying in the apartment mostly. I'm thinking, even though I rent, to just buy a big bag of rock salt for whenever I feel like leaving the apartment, so that I feel safe leaving without buying snowshoes. I mean,
No,
snow boots.
That's a problem up here right now because it's too cold for salt.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true here.
It won't be true in about a week.
Mm.
The deep freeze is supposed to be ending early next week, and we're supposed to be seeing late upper 30s by the end of next week.
Oh, we're seeing 30s by Sunday.
Really?
So
I thought we had a back to the deep freeze again for a couple of days.
It'll maybe hit like high teens for a day or two, but we're over here by Sunday we're gonna be hitting like 35.
So it looks like we're mostly sitting in the teens and 20s, which is actually colder than I thought we would get. But judging by all the cold hitting the rest of the states, that's not surprising that it's colder than I expected the winter to get. And it looks like there's more snow coming.
Yeah, we're supposed to be getting...
Oh yeah, that's coming off the lakes now.
Yeah, we're supposed to get some more here too, so that ought to be fun.
So by translation, roughly -7 or so Celsius around here.
Yeah, when we're talking negative, we're talking negative Fahrenheit, which is...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I figured translate it every once in a while because Thomas shouldn't be expected to sit there with a calculator.
Well, yeah, like at this point, I basically figure I'll put it this way. I basically take your word for it because it's like, I'm just used to majority of the world using Celsius. So.
Yeah, I know.
I believe our 70 is your 30.
I know. We Americans are behind the times.
I would have an easier time adapting if it weren't for the fact that Celsius degrees are so much closer together than Fahrenheit ones. So it's a bit harder for me to mentally adapt than something like kilometers.
Yeah.
Celsius for me is easy.
Like Celsius
at 0 water freezes, at 100 water boils. Hey.
Yeah, when you're doing science, it's simple. But like going from like 70 Fahrenheit to Celsius, like I know it's less than 100, it's more than 0. Other than that, I need an equation.
And I did that in my head.
Yeah. I'll put it this way: it's apparently 27 Celsius in my hometown. Apparently, that's about 81 Fahrenheit.
Okay, so probably closer to 25.
What I mainly remember from when I was in Spain was that if it's 30 Celsius, it's starting to get hot. If it's 40 Celsius, it's really hot.
Yeah, 40.
And if it's 20 Celsius, it's not hot at all.
I just remember that the human body, which is 98.6 in Fahrenheit, is about 37 degrees Celsius. And that helps me figure out the weather from there.
Yeah, generally 40 is the school's close because it's too hot.
Anyway, enough talking about the weather. On tonight's show, we've got birthdays, we've got a bit of news, we've got some geek talk, and then our episode summary, our review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. So let's go down to birthdays, shall we? Last time was February 10th, so our first birthday is actually February 12th. And that is Nabil Shaban, who played the villainous Syl in 1985 and again in 1986. He turned 68. Also on the same day is the birthday of Gareth Thomas, who played Ed Morgan in the Torchwood episode Ghost Machine, but's better known as being the titular role on Blake's 7. He would have been 76, but he died in 2016 at the age of 71. Next, we have Simon Pegg, who played the editor in The Long Game in 2005. Also tended to narrate the
Doctor Who Confidential.
Confidential. Thank you. I could not remember the final name. And, of course, is better known more recently for his role in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek, where he played Scotty, as well as his own movies such as Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. He turned 51. On the 16th was the birthday of Christopher Eccleston, who played the Doctor in 2005. He turned 57. The same day is the birthday of Jeremy Bulloch, who played Hal in The Time Warrior in 1974, best known for being the Boba Fett in Star Wars. He would have been 76, but died in 2020 at 75. Also, on the 17th is the birthday of Philip Latham, who played President Barusa in The Five Doctors in 1983. He would have been 92, but he also died in 2020 at the age of 91. Wow. 2 2020 deaths and one birthday roll.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, a happy birthday to Nabil, Gareth, Simon, Christopher, Jeremy, and Philip. All right, so moving on to Series 13 news. There's been more filming in the city of Barry, Wales, or the Isle of Barry. This time, they have been seen filming in the Porthcurry Country Park. Apparently, this was somebody, a actress wearing leather boots, a backpack, and pistol, was being filmed via drone running across the park and making backward looks, possibly for a bump trailer or for a bump scene or something early on. Probably the drone is filling in for some kind of alien attack craft. However, we won't really know until it comes to air.
I like the random dog being walked in the foreground of the shot.
Hey, it happens.
But that won't show up in the Doctor Who episode, unfortunately.
Yeah, they'll probably edit it out. But this is not the first Barry filming, of course. They have seemed to have been filming in Barry for about 3-4 weeks now, I think. Both at Knapp Beach and Friars Point. It is not yet known if this is Block 1 filming or Block 2 filming. If so, this would be a separate entry. If it's Block 2, this would be a separate episode from the previous Barry filming. So, we don't know yet. All right. So that's our only major piece of news. Moving on to new releases from Big Finish. Torchwood Drive is out with Naoko Mori, who plays Toshiko Sato. That is the only Big Finish release. The free episode this week is non-Doctor Who. So really, that's it for the news. Let's move on to Geek Talk.
Starts with Thomas.
Yep. As far as UHF goes, it's kind of funny because this is a movie I've known about since I was like 12, maybe, or at least been aware of the song for it. But I had never seen it until this year because I'd never had a way of seeing it, not legally anyway. And I just never bothered to track it down before anyway, and the streaming service had it, so I was like, okay, I'm watching it. I was happy that I enjoyed it because it was one of those things where, oh my god, this has so much build up. I don't know, like, will I have set my standards too high? And thankfully, even if I had, this was still able to meet it. Um,
Good, because Matt and I would have probably killed you if it had.
Hand me the
generally
sword.
a lot of the humor holds up. Even if some of it's probably of course I find it funny that apparently internationally this is called like the Vidiot from UHF, but on the streaming service I was using they just called it UHF.
Everybody who knows Weird Al knows it as UHF.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was pretty funny. It was funny to realize, oh yeah, I remember that scene from the music video that I watched ad nauseum because we had it on like a DVD compilation of a bunch of his music videos. It was interesting to learn that a character that I didn't even think about this until afterwards, but the character Raoul, who's doing his little Animal Kingdom show from his apartment, that actor died while they were still filming, so they had to drop that plot entirely. Which was like, oh fuck, and then it made me realize, oh yeah, he does kind of drop out of the movie without any fanfare. He just does the "we don't need no stinking badges" thing, and then that's it. Because yeah, the actor unfortunately died in a car crash that killed him and injured his the family that was in the car with him, which is like, oh fuck. And like at the end it was like, oh, the movie is dedicated to that actor. So that was like, oh, then suddenly that kind of retroactively made sense. But yeah, it's weird seeing Fran Drescher in something where she's not doing her voice as over the top as she does in like The Nanny
Like
and
everything else,
after it. Yeah. Because this feels like this just sounds like this is probably what her normal voice is.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and she's just playing it up.
This is what basically landed her the nanny.
Mm.
Because she literally got the nanny, I think, the following year after this movie came out.
That would make sense. Yeah, it was just funny seeing her in something where she's essentially doing the kind of archetype of character she'd play, but like with the voice toned down. So it's just like, wow, why doesn't she do more stuff like this with this voice? Because it's less. I mean, like I like The Nanny fine, but it was still just kind of like, wow, it's weird hearing her voice being a lot less over the top. And it's generally also weird seeing the actor who played Kramer before. Well, I'm assuming this would have been before Seinfeld.
Yeah, again, this is what pretty much landed him, Kramer, on Seinfeld, as they saw him do this and like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Because yeah, it was just and it's kind of funny in a way because it almost feels like without ever making direct parallels outside of maybe one line of dialogue, it kind of feels like he's supposed to be a bit Forrest Gump-ish sort of parody. Because I just kept thinking in parody terms, so it's like, oh, okay, so he's supposed to be like the equivalent of
he's
Forrest
actually
Gump in this movie in a
character was supposed to be based on Christopher Lloyd's character from Taxi. The Reverend Jim. Because, mind you, Forrest Gump didn't come out until like 7 years after this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, wouldn't that be hilarious if it retroactively was the other way around? But yeah, like, that was interesting. It was just generally a lot of it in some cases was just kind of fun seeing like, oh, so that's the context for that scene and whatever. And it was just bizarre learning that this is where the Money for Nothing Beverly Hills parody came from.
Oh, yep.
It's just a dream sequence in the movie. It's like, oh, okay. Well, I do like this parody. I haven't heard it in forever, but I'll sit through this. kind of odd to have a music video in the middle of this, but it fits in with the everything else. But yeah, and
Well,
generally
it's Weird
it
Al.
was
They were
nice
just like,
thing.
we have to have a video in here somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it also helped that I went into this not. It's kind of funny because it feels more linear than I would have thought it was going to be, but it's still not necessarily structured like a traditional movie in a way. So, like, because I was coming into it thinking, okay, this probably isn't going to be a typical movie just because of who's behind it. But yeah, it was like, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I would definitely say to anyone in Australia who's never seen it, it's on Stan. Like, if you have Stan, watch it, or like maybe try to track down a DVD if you're lucky, because I don't think anywhere carries things from it. Yeah, I definitely say it's worth checking out, and I am glad that I finally got around to seeing it,
A drink
even though
out of
it
the
took
hose
until I
of
was
10.
friggin' 30.
Yeah, I will say that this movie was ahead of its time because this came out in 1989, and at the time, Weird Al was kind of known. He had just done the Even Worse album with Fat, and that had put him more on the map than he'd been before. But it was before the age of the 90s where
Yeah.
he became uber famous from his Smells Like Nirvana and Flintstones parodies, and Amish Paradise, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where he became part of mainstream culture. If this movie had come out during that time, it would have topped charts. But
Or
because
probably would have, yeah.
but because Weird Al was still kind of a niche performer in a year that had several mainstream big movies, it got buried.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the same year Batman came out and Lethal Weapon 2. It just got completely and totally buried. But here's an interesting tidbit for Matt. You remember the role of Philo in this movie? The scientist?
Oh,
That role was originally written with them in mind to have it played by Joel Hodgson.
Oh. That would have been interesting.
However, Hodgson turned it down because he felt he wasn't a good actor.
Wow.
And of
I don't know
course,
if Joel
Hodgson
would
was
agree with
busy.
that anymore.
And at the time, he was also busy with MST3K.
I was going to say, the main thing would probably be MST3K, and that's where his heart and that was his baby at
But
the
mind
time.
you, that this was still at the time that it was on public access.
Yeah, well, it was just getting off the ground.
Because this would have been filmed in probably 88.
Yeah, I don't think it was till the next year they were officially on cable. So actually, it might have been just around the time when they knew they might have been landing cable, so they needed to. They were too busy upgrading everything that he could just drop MST3K and go over and make a movie.
Anyway, it also probably was why he didn't think he was a good actor at the time, because all he had under his belt was one season of a public access show.
That, and he had a stand-up career, which landed him writing for a number of years, but he wasn't probably sure about his acting yet.
Yeah, that's what I meant. And that's probably how they knew him, was his stand-up.
He was very much a, you know how they'd always do the invention exchange at the beginning of episodes with Joel? That was where his original stand-up was kind of like.
Yeah, and that's what they wanted. But if you take a look at who else they got for actors and actresses in this, Victoria Jackson, Michael Richards, Fran Drescher, all of them at the time were stand-up comedians. So they hired massively from the stand-up people, and I'm sure there's some other people here that were from the stand-up community that I just don't recognize. But this was literally the on-road to acting for many stand-up people.
Yeah. I will actually add that probably one of the jokes that happens early on that was like, okay, yeah, I'm probably going to vibe with this movie quite a lot, was the homeless guy asking for change, and he literally gives him change for $1. It's just like, you're expecting him to just give him change and he'll fuck off, but it's like, okay, I literally just wanted change for $1.
That was Vance Colvig Jr. And he was a big character actor. Used to voice Chopper the Bulldog on the Yogi Bear Show.
Anyway, I guess we're ready to go.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, so the next one is from me. Since I have access to Disney Plus and was caught up with shows I was watching, I watched the first Fantastic Four movie just to see how it was, and it was actually better than I expected. I can see why it's the only Fantastic Four movie to this date to have had a sequel made of it. It's not perfect by any means, but so for some background, it's made during 2005, 3 years before the MCU got started. And so it was during that time when superhero movies were trying to punch a little above their pay grade, which definitely you can see in the effects. And I think that's one of the biggest criticisms this got when it first came out. But focusing on the story, I thought it was pretty passable. The characters played off one another fairly well. I think when it first came out, I criticized the decision, the route they went with Doom, being an executive. Possibly, yeah, he went to MIT, so I guess still a scientist, but mainly kind of a CEO of a tech company, basically. But it really works in this story, and I think the Fantastic Four movies in general, because they try to introduce the whole team in a regular length movie, are really hampered by the amount of characters they need to introduce. So having Doom be a local character actually makes a lot of sense. I kind of as kind of a thought exercise, I did a post on Twitter about an idea of making Fantastic Four movies where literally Fantastic Four was the fourth movie in the series, which I don't know if a studio or audiences would really go for that, but it was at least fun to think about. So Doom's decision to put on the mask actually is foreshadowed in the way that he really does not want to be humanized as a character, and it's kind like it's a character trait, I should say. It's not like direct foreshadowing. One thing I noticed, I was kind of looking this up to see why it was so poorly regarded, although it was mainly the sequel and the remake that were poorly regarded. But apparently Jessica Alba has basically said that the director told her to act poorly in these two Fantastic Four movies, and she had some poor words to say about that. So that certainly might be a role. One thing that I think makes this movie stand out is being a 2005 movie. It was shot during the era when New York City was really used as a character and not as a setting, which you can also see in the original Spider-Man trilogy. And I think that definitely gives the movie some flavor that you don't really see in the MCU. I've also heard that because The Incredibles came out in 2004 and they were more or less a parody of teams like the Fantastic Four, that it required some rewrites because they had kind of poked fun at some of the stuff that Fantastic Four had planned to do. I don't know anything more certain about that. That's kind of something I heard like third hand. So I would have to look that up more to see if there was any truth.
Don't know about rewrites, but yeah, the Incredibles are definitely a knockoff of Fantastic Four.
Yeah, but I mean, Incredibles probably came out while this was in pre-production, so it definitely makes sense that they would have seen that and been like, "Shit, we can't do that now."
I mean, it would be hilarious to me if they were almost like, "Hey, let's use the Mole Man," and then they see this, and it's like, "Well, no."
Nope, we gotta rename him now.
The fuck you! I want the MCU to use Mole Man. God damn it!
I actually think it would be a good decision.
I
And it
mean,
would be
they had.
something that I don't think has been used in a Fantastic Four movie yet.
I mean, he is their first villain.
Has
so...
Moman been used in a Fantastic Four movie? Yes, he has been.
So you mentioned
okay.
Doom. Do you realize that they had originally cast Nicolas Cage as Doom,
he,
but he dropped out?
Wasn't he Ghost Rider like, at the same time?
he became Ghost Rider like about
2
6 years later.
2 years.
Jesus Christ!
Was it only 2 years? I could have sworn it was a lot more later than this.
2007.
I
Yeesh.
both would like have been like, what are you doing? But also, I would have loved to just see that happen.
Although actually, I think that would have been a bonus, just because I feel like the cast is fairly homogeneous. Like, if they're not, if Doom isn't acting evil or arrogant in a scene, Doom and Reed in this movie are kind of hard to tell apart. Like, they're very, very similar looking, very similar acting men. The only difference is that one is like more focused on power, and the other is oblivious about. Well, they're kind of both oblivious about relationships, so they don't even have that distinguishing them.
I guess my question is, what was it like watching Chris Evans as a Human Torch after seeing him as Captain America?
I feel like his voice was different enough, and his costuming was different enough that if I didn't know ahead of time that they were the same actor, I would not have made the connection. I would have maybe watched it after the fact and been like, "Oh shit, that is the same guy. He has the same face." But he plays it very differently. He has more of like a high pitched, and I mean, he was young. He was years. Well, he was a little younger, but he puts on an older, more bass voice for Captain America than he does for Johnny Storm. Johnny Storm, he basically plays like he's trying to sound like a teenager. Captain America is, a military officer.
Another fun fact with you: this was supposed to exist in the same universe as the X-Men films. There was a scene that was cut from the theatrical version where Reed Richards changes his face to resemble Hugh Jackman's Wolverine.
That's right. I did see like a shot of that floating around online somewhere.
It's restored in the extended cut, but it was cut from the theatrical version. But that would have basically put this in the X-Men universe.
It's interesting. It's in the comics, Johnny Storm and Spider-Man are like best friends, so I always want to see them on screen together.
Yeah, they have been occasionally very buddy.
And nowadays, what we can hope for is Spidey Pool.
We'll see.
I guess in a way,
but
that's
yeah,
funny.
the unreleased Fantastic Four actually did have Mole Man as one of the main villains in the movie.
So the unreleased.
So the air quotes unreleased because it's still out there.
Right. That's what was that, like 90s?
That was like a late 90s one, yeah. Or like a mid 90s.
I've seen clips of it. I haven't watched it myself.
I've watched the whole thing. I will say that the acting is better than this movie. But the special effects are definitely unfinished.
I was gonna say, if I recall, the budget for that was like Showa era Kamen Rider, right?
It was a Roger Corman film.
It was a Roger Corman film, so it was maybe a little more than a Kamen Rider show, but it was definitely not like high budget.
Yeah. So an MCU Mole Man would probably literally be nothing like the one in that.
Probably not. Actually, the Mole Man in that movie actually reminds me a lot of the Penguin from Batman Returns.
Which,
but also it's very clear that the movie's not finished because, in particular, Dr. Doom, you could barely hear him over the classic clicking and clunking of his outfit, even though he's putting on the best performance you could possibly ask from this guy.
Of course, yeah, you bring up Batman Returns, and that just made me realize I feel like people, or at least me, it would be so fun if they did do Mole Man in the MCU and they got Danny DeVito
That would
to
work
do that.
still.
Because they could very easily with if they do the outfit right, they could just have someone do all the stunt stuff
Is
Mhm.
DeVito
that
still
he'd have to
acting?
do.
He
pretty
was
sure
doing
he
Sunny
is.
in Philadelphia for God knows how long. Is that still going on or not?
I think it is. Could be wrong, but I mean, he did that Dumbo movie with Disney,
Oh, that's
like
true
the
too.
remake
Yeah.
of Dumbo
So not that
more
long ago. That
recently.
was like 2-3 years.
Hmm.
He's definitely doing
Yeah.
voices. Was he in person or wait, Dumbo? Doesn't say voice, so I'm guessing he was in person for Dumbo.
It still says he's
Yeah, he
present
was
for
live
actor.
action for Dumbo.
Oh
Yeah.
my god, if they ever made a live action Gravity Falls, you should get DeVito to play Grunkle Stan. He is that.
As desperate as Disney is for live action, that's not beyond reach.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's probably pretty much all I have to say about Fantastic Four.
Alrighty.
I mean, seriously. This is what he looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, apparently he's still active. I didn't know if they were still doing Philadelphia or not, but he's
Yeah. He was also
he's-
in the newest Jumanji movie.
Oh.
that
Okay,
was
I
only
was
a
not
couple
aware of
weeks
that.
ago.
Actually, you know what? No, now that I
Hmm.
think of it, yeah, of course I'm aware of that. Dummy
He
me.
is doing
Yeah.
a lot more voice acting than he is live acting.
Yeah.
Well,
these
right
days.
now, yeah, because
Yeah.
it would cost a small fortune to get somebody as old as him to be okay to
Hmm.
be on set.
Hmm.
Because that costs money to protect older people because of the virus. But anyway.
Oh yeah, apparently Always Sunny is still going on. So
Sparrow 3, apparently.
Yep. I finally finished the Spyro Reignited trilogy this morning, and essentially that was just finishing the remake of Spyro 3 Year of the Dragon. It's kind of interesting because it is still very much sort of in line with the first two to a point, except there's a new new enemy, new new thing to collect. Like you're not I mean, it's sort of like the first one in a way, but in this case, instead of dragons encased in crystal or whatever, you're trying to find dragon eggs. Um, but and there's like they've introduced new characters like all over the place. They've added a skateboarding element to certain parts of the game, which is to me was hilarious because I was aware of it, but it was still like when it came up the first time, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, this is a part of the game. I almost wanted to bring up Spotify and play songs that were on the bloody Tony Hawk's Pro Skater soundtrack and just listen to those while playing that. Uh, but yeah, I one sticking point I have is that I find it hilarious, and I would have brought this up in text in the Discord server. Is like there's a character called Sheila who is a kangaroo who is very clearly actually voiced by an Australian actress, and then they have these tiki people who, for some reason, also are Australian, but they're very clearly voiced by actors who are not Australian, trying very hard to do a over the top Australian accent. And it's like, God, that is so jarring. Like, you couldn't just get like a handful, or even just like, yeah, like two, like Australian actors who could do like a few different vocals for it, and they would have been cheap anyway because they're Aussie actors. But like, it
Heaven
just
forbid.
that like yeah, that was a sticking point for me because it's just like, oh come on. But yeah, and it's so obvious too. It's so funny. Like, I think I heard the fake Aussie accent guys first, and then here's Sheila talking with a very like, oh yep, this is actually an Australian accent, not an overdone Steve Irwin style accent.
Crikey.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh my god. But yeah, it's like aside from that, it was fine. Like, it's funny. In a way, I almost feel like in certain ways this could be easier, but the final boss pissed me off because it's like in sort of waves, and there's like a thing that you have to use to damage the boss because your normal attacks don't work at all. And the final thing you're given, where it's the only option you can use to attack them, is so fiddly with the controls. And I was just like, fucking hell, this is a pain in the ass. Like, I lost quite a few lives just because of how fiddly it was to control. Other people might have an easier time with it, but yeah, that was just like, what the fuck? But yeah, ultimately, I would recommend the trilogy, like the Reignited trilogy overall. I mean, God knows it's graphically a million times better than the original PS1 games. And as I've said before, I honestly believe that this is graphically better than these Crash Bandicoot remakes because they looked really fucking weird to me. Something seemed to way too off about them. It felt too like clean. It didn't feel like lived in or something. Whereas the Spyro remakes, it works. Probably just because the aesthetic is different and like it didn't have much, and like you're collecting gems, so them being really shiny is fine. But yeah, that by comparison, I feel like this is superior looking. I wouldn't know about playing because I haven't played the Crash remakes, but yeah, I would definitely say it's worth checking out whether you've played the original games or not. I'd say it's worth it because I had not played Spyro 2 and 3 before at all. And it was worth, as far as I'm concerned, it was worth playing through.
All right. So I guess it then goes to me if you're done.
Yep.
All right. So I recently decided I was done trying to play Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. Oops, there we go. So actually, I think the best way to summarize my thoughts on this is actually to go back to my Steam review for this game. Yes, I felt so strongly about this game, I actually made a quick Steam review. I'll get to the pointed stuff and skip a little bit of some of the other stuff I put in here. So despite having better lightsaber moves and abilities than the previous game, it somehow manages to make it worse with legit impossible to see enemies that snap you from across a level. Not only that, not that seeing them would have helped, as the only attack you can't block is a sniper rifle. As if that's not bad enough, though, they also hide key things like turrets, so you're not likely to easily find them when you need them to defeat bigger boss or semi-boss like creatures. And the aiming is so abysmal in this game that in the attempts to shoot just one stormtrooper, you're going to lose half your ammo. How's this character even an ex-Jedi? He couldn't hit the broadside of a bantha. Yeah, I was suffering through the shooting parts of this game. They were very lackluster. It did take a lot of ammo to try and hit anything because characters would just not stop dancing around and sidestepping everything you did. And there is an ability to turn on auto aim, but auto aim is no better. Literally, Doom has faster bullets in this game. These are laser guns. Why are they so slow? The shooting is far superior in any of the previous games, and whereas they finally improved lightsabers to the point where you feel like you could actually use them against anybody, it's quickly outdone by the fact that they literally added a new weapon type that just instantly defeats you if you get hit by it enough. And it's very easy to do when you're in a giant open level with about 10 guys all going, oh look, the Jedi walked into the open again. Zap! Yeah, that just basically brought me down to the point that I'm basically swearing off ever doing any more of the Jedi Knight series. It was that abysmal of an experience, and I know there's some people who are looking forward to me doing Jedi Academy. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Not unless you could prove to me that it's in every way far superior to Jedi Outcast, which came before it. This thing was so awful, even I walked away from it. Even after I gave a huge amount of leeway on the previous game, Jedi Knight 1, Dark Forces 2. Because the lightsaber battling in that one was just so abysmal.
The titling on these games is worse than the Rambo movies.
Oh yeah, it's just as bad.
It was
I'll
the
say it's at
90s.
least as bad. But yeah, I'm flabbergasted at how awful this game is. If you literally look up the game on Steam, and I wish I would have done so before I actually got it moons ago, there's nothing but constant complaints of how bad and how hard it is to even shoot people with a regular blaster in the Star Wars game. And not on top only that, but on top of that, there's a ton of people having tons of issues trying to get this thing to even run. Somehow I had it run just fine. Don't ask me why, but everything else was definitely an issue. Um, I would say that also I don't really know a whole heck of a lot of the plot, although it did seem like it was kind of interesting because you did actually have a very brief appearance of Luke Skywalker, and you do a quick training bit at the Jedi Temple in order to get your lightsaber back. But that's immediately underswept by the next level, which again, just out of the blue, introduces, oh, by the way, here's sniper rifles, and they can shoot past your ability to block anything else with a lightsaber. Good luck, Chuckles. Because here's also an entire open area where they're just going to constantly shoot you. Yeah, after about 40 minutes of that, I just finally said, no, I had enough. This is garbage. This is the worst Star Wars game I've ever played. And I had issues with some of the Super Nintendo games back in the day. I would rather play those. Matter of fact, actually, I would rather play any of the Battlefront games, and I think both of them are available on Steam still. The original ones, not the EA ones.
Could be.
I know for a fact the second one is. I'm not sure. The first one keeps, like, ebbing and flowing whether or not it's around.
Mm.
But yeah, this was just abysmal. I have not. It's been a while since I had a game that I literally disliked this much. I was preferred to still play Lego Hobbit. With all of its inability to actually finish the story, I would much prefer to play that. Battlefront.
Yep, there is the. They seem to specify them as classic.
Oh,
so
classic is actually
classic
still
and-
available? Ooh.
Yep.
I can buy that. Do I have the money for it? I'll have to look later. I would gladly play any of the original Star Wars Battlefront games with anybody because I also know there's actually a big fan network of servers out there that are still allowing multiplayer and stuff too, so it's totally worth it.
Mm.
But anyways, yeah, just Outcast, avoid at all costs. It is a hotbed mess. Apparently there are people out there modding it, and I'm still of the opinion of if you need to mod it to make it playable,
Mm.
Well, gee, that opinion basically negates every Bethesda game ever made.
Not so. Well, that negates that would negate maybe half of the Elder Scrolls games at this point. The friggin' Fallout games are mostly playable still. Last time I checked.
There are some people that would argue that with you.
Well, it depends upon which ones and what their computers do with them.
Fallout 3, Fallout 4.
I hear plenty of people had lots of
we
issues
don't
with
we
Fallout
don't
4.
we don't
I'm not
talk
even touching it.
we're not even talking about New Vegas because that was technically not
That's
Bethesda.
technically not Bethesda, and actually it had fixes compared to Fallout 3. But anyway.
Hmm.
But yeah, well, the reason why I'm starting to fall out of any interest in trying to mod games to make them playable is because of Bethesda. Because even modding Skyrim did not bug out; it still bugged out and pissed me off too. So when you get to the final boss just isn't supposed to become totally invincible, especially when he has a key weakness where you knock him to the ground. Just saying, Bethesda. Just saying.
So while we were doing this, Aaron posted a copy of somebody's Twitter.
Hmm?
Going back to our earlier topic of the weather.
Oh,
Hour 62 of no power in central Austin. One of my
Oh.
neighbors walked to 7-Eleven a couple hours ago and found a dead woman frozen on the sidewalk.
I saw that.
Jesus.
Those are
Oh,
the conditions
jeez.
here in Austin, Texas, for those who
Mm.
like to make jokes about how weak or stupid we are. No, I'm just making a point that part of this is what happens when you privatize your power system and separate it from the national grid.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's the people who are blaming the citizenry for it and not the local government that are
Yeah,
pissing
this is
people
some
off.
government stuff that should have been fixed a
I've,
long
I've,
time
I've
ago.
seen screenshots of people basically saying, "Oh, it's a red state, so everyone who lives there deserves whatever they get."
Oh, hell no.
And for
No.
one thing, if they paid attention in November, it was pretty damn purple. Just for the factual aspect of that, even if you ignore having any sort of empathy or compassion.
Hmm.
No, I'm just saying that their politicians were stupid when they privatized their grid
Yes.
and took it off the national because you don't have the backup you need in case of an emergency like this.
And then they immediately started spreading lies about what actually caused it and saying that a law that hasn't even been put in place is the cause of it. And everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, apparently Houston's been out of water for the past 2 days, but my friend in Houston is staying with her boyfriend who has power and water.
Hmm.
Yeah, and of course, no power means no heat for a lot of people. And this is not a state where you have heavy winter clothing.
No.
Hmm.
I mean, if this happened in Montana, Montana's just like, psh, we've got heavy clothing, we've got multiple blankets, we're ready to go. Texas, not so much. And if this happened in Arizona and New Mexico, it'd be just as bad,
Hmm.
except they're still attached to the national grid.
That occurs to me when I checked on my dad and he didn't seem bothered by it at all. It might be partially because he's a Connecticut transplant and probably brought all of his coats with him, so he can just throw on a coat if it gets cold.
Maybe.
Hmm.
I mean, I haven't lived in there, but I've lived in SoCal. And, when the weather goes from 70 to 60 and people are putting on coats because they're like, it's cold, I'm like, you fuckers are nuts. This is not cold. This is mildly cooler than it was a month ago.
Hmm.
The people eventually get no definition for what real cold weather is like. And I think those politicians just got a little too used to that fact and didn't think about what would happen if they had an actual
Yeah,
cold
they got a
weather.
little too used to assuming everything's going to be fine always.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, this is...
Anyway.
Anyway, yeah, we should move on.
Moving on, it is now time for the episode summary.
All right, and I believe I am the one summarizing today.
Yep, I am starting up the stopwatch. Give me a moment. Because, I tried to make a link directly to it, and Google's like, no! All right, I'm ready.
All right.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so we start off with Luke. He's going to Clyde's house because apparently he's going to have a sleepover, despite arguments as to what it's actually called. Luke is there, and they're apparently having a bit of fun, even teasing his mom a little bit before they go to bed. The next morning, things seem to be all right. The boys finally get out of bed, and the Clive's forced to get up and answer the door to find out that his dad, who apparently walked out on them multiple years ago, is suddenly coming in for a visit. There's a bit of talking as to what they're going to do. It's decided that he's going to go and visit with his father, like go for a little bit of walk down to the park and stuff. Luke decides he's going to go meet up with Ronnie, which was one of their plans eventually. Anyways, he's just going to head over there, and hopefully the whole group would meet up eventually. What's also been going on while this has all been happening is that Ronnie has bumped into a weird event where she noticed one of the other boys at school was getting very easily upset for some reason, and the medallion he had was starting to glow and cause things to happen, including people being unable to speak and telling everyone to just freeze, and they literally freeze in place. He felt something strange, however, freaked out and ran off to the bathroom. After tossing away a medallion and it hit the ground, everything he had done had been undone, to which Ronnie went to check on him. He ran off in a panic, and she took the medallion as well for herself. When she accidentally commands her father to listen to her orders, she does test it out for a few more moments before realizing something else weird is going on and decides to stop and just basically restart her father's memories without realizing all this had gone on. She answers the door as well to find that the boy who originally had the medallion is out there warning her that it starts to do things to you, and it starts to basically talk to you, kind of like a One Ring deal. She decides to leave at Sarah Jane's because Sarah's out at a hospital dealing with other alien menaces, and tries to leave it be for another time being. When she meets up with Luke the next day, they decide that they're going to try and find out more. But before they can do that, Clyde had come back with his father, trying to tell him all about his recent history with Sarah Jane and his friends, and that they're basically Earth savers to some degree, and that there's some stuff that up in the attic in Sarah Jane's house that can prove that he does in fact interact with things from outer space. His father is drawn in by the whispers of the medallion, I guess you could say, and he takes it for himself and starts using it. First forcing Ronnie's father to endlessly do push-ups, and then forcing his son to then forget Luke and Ronnie ever existed, and then walking off with him. He continues to use the medallion to make him not notice things until the point where he starts to go into a very unusual state where like blue veins are showing up. At this point, Ronnie and Luke have been trying to trail after them. They managed to get a hold of, I believe it was Maria, and her father, and they managed to track them down via their phone GPS, and they're going to try and remove the medallion one way or another. But as they're doing this, Maria and her father make other plans to contact somebody else. Getting towards the end of this, Clive's father is planning to run off with him on a yacht. He starts to have this moment where he doubles over and then comes back up. His eyes are whitened and his veins are popping with this blue, almost glow to them. His mother and the rest of the crew start to show up, and they try to convince him that they still know him, even though he seems to have forgotten them because of all of the demands of the medallion. The medallion is apparently turning his father into Berserker, and that's the moment where Sarah Jane walks in, having been contacted by Maria and her father, apparently sending a message to the hospital. She manages to remind him of some of the memories he used to have of his son and what his humanity is really like, and Clive and his mother also join in trying to help out, and finally he manages to unragify, or unberserk rather, tosses the medallion and undoes everything he had been doing the entire day. Clive has a few words with his father before also washing his mother's memory of anything that was going on that was technically extraterrestrial, and then toss the medallion into the water before joining everyone else and walking off. And later on, having a quick talk with Sarah Jane, then that she's not angry and she totally understands to some degree what he's going through. The end. A little bit over.
Okay, yeah, I had to unmute myself because I had to sneeze at least once while you were in there, and I didn't think y'all wanted to hear that. Yeah, you did it in about 5 minutes, 18 seconds.
Yeah, actually, I almost exactly matched that.
Okay, so let's talk about what we like about the episode. And Matt, you are first.
All right, I'm going to go for an easy one. This is one I was thinking of almost from get-go. My word, is the makeup really good in this one.
Yeah, that's true.
It definitely has to be some sort of makeup effect. I'm not sure how much of it is digital and what is or isn't digital in these effects,
Probably the
but it does
glowing
look
is
like it's
digital.
mostly makeup.
Yeah.
It probably helps that they didn't have to do an alien.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The vein effects are really good. They do have they make them bright enough that they almost have a almost luminescent glow to them. The coloration also somewhat matches with the medallion lights, and also the contacts. Well, contacts like that are a dime a dozen these days, but back then those were pretty good as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's pretty good Russell era effects.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Thomas, how about you?
I guess I just like that this, to a point, focuses on Clyde in a way that you sort of get why he is the way he is to a point. It's like we finally actually get some explanation.
It
To a
expands on his
degree.
character. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's been around for like the full series, and now this is like the fourth story of this series, I think. So yeah, it's like it was nice to finally get like a Clyde. As far as I can tell, I think this is like the first Clyde focused.
There's some
story, or at
semi-Clyde
least
focus, but
at
this
least
is the first Clyde. What's his background focus?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time that they expand on his family. I think there had been a couple of episodes that focused on him, but not on his family, or really expanded his background. But yeah, this really brought him into a better focus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bill.
So this kind of overlaps, but I think it's different enough that I can go with it. And it was the main cast in general, not Luke quite so much, I don't think, but both Ronnie and Clyde get a very good range of emotions. They get good ups, they get good downs, and yeah, they really get to show their range in there.
Yeah, where Luke just kind of goes bewildered between the two of them. And that could be why that actor doesn't actually act anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I liked the fact that this was obviously a Sarah Jane Light story. We only have 3 scenes with her in the entire thing.
Pretty much.
Well, four with the epilogue.
Yeah. Which is kind of ironic, which is kind of funny, because as far as I can recall, the next story is a Sarah heavy one, and
Tends
less
to happen.
focus on the sort of companion-y characters.
They tended to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one in particular, Sarah is there to drop off Luke at the beginning. There's the scene with her in the hospital. She shows up to confront the guy at the end, and then you have the epilogue where she's up in the attic.
Yeah.
Which is mostly a lead into the next episode.
Yeah. Which, if anything, that would have been a backup thing for me. Is like, I like that Clyde gets the moment to essentially diffuse the situation, and it's more Sarah nudging him to, like, essentially, like, you know what you've got to do, like, do it, as opposed to her swooping in at the last minute and saving the day, kind of a thing.
All right, so let's talk about what we don't like about the episode. Matt.
What I don't like about the episode. I'm trying to think of anything like journal in particular, and I'm not really coming up with anything at the moment.
You want to take a pass then?
Yeah, I think I might have to actually take a pass on this one.
All right.
See if I come up with anything later.
Thomas?
It's funny. I'm trying to think of something as well. At least that isn't like... it's almost like a similar problem to last week, where certain issues I have more could be summarized with like a scene as opposed to like an overall. God. Let's see. I guess just generally some of the dad's acting was like, I don't know. Like, he doesn't come off as a bad actor at all, but I don't know. I think it's like mainly once he's like getting taken over more and more by the Berserker, it's just like Berserker thing is just like, even for a kid show, some of this seems a bit much.
Well, some of the plot for a kid show was kind of dark. About the fact that the father was basically panic fleeing from finding out that the woman he left his wife for is pregnant. That's kind of heavy to put in a kid show.
Yeah.
So I imagine there were at least a few kids watching that, with their own fathers having disappeared, being like relatable.
Yeah, I'm very sure it is relatable. It's just kind of heavy.
Which again is something that we've actually have credited this show before. It does tend to not veer away from the punches.
It doesn't talk down to its audience.
Yeah. Like, it has some kid showy moments, but like it never feels like it's talking down to the audience, at least.
Yeah, they'll definitely have kiddie moments, which is where they'll show where those kid show parts are, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a secret nib level show. We're not going to pull punches for kids. We're going to terrify the pants off you sometimes.
So, Bill, what about you? Do you have something you don't like?
So what I don't like is it's not specific to this episode, but it kind of it's three of a kind in that it highlights a pattern in modern Doctor Who in general, but also very specifically the RTD era. So as far as I can count, since Doctor Who has been revived, we've had 6 main characters who are black, and I know that some have claimed that Doctor Who does not that is written in a fully colorblind way. But what I've noticed from that is that if you take out the one character from the Moffat era who has a full family, one from the Moffat era who never mentions her family, the 3 from the RTD era plus Ryan. So even if we leave Ryan out, all 3 main black characters from the RTD era have fathers who have walked out of the family either for no reason or as a conflict of at least one episode. And just by the fact that there's a severe lack of balance there, comes to me that says he may or may not be aware of it, but RTD or someone on his payroll seems to have a problem with black fathers. And I hope they didn't carry that on to the next show.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like a sort of a negative stereotype of like, you know, black fathers not being there at all,
Right.
like running out on their families, and it's like maybe don't
Yeah, that's not a
perpetuate that with
stereotype
the
you necessarily
very
want to be pushing in your kid's show.
because like either the parents aren't there at all, like with Mickey, we only see like his grandmother in an alternate universe.
With Mickey, they say in an episode that his father just walked out one day.
Wow.
So yeah, basically all of the
Martha is the one that has the best ending, and that's because the family is basically tortured, and then the parents end up getting back together, I think.
Or at the very least are on good terms again.
Right.
But
yeah, Tanya is the only one that has a functional nuclear family of the main black characters in Doctor Who, and she comes from what's widely regarded as the worst Doctor Who spinoff.
Of course, I'm pretty sure Martha's also the only one, aside from Clyde in this, that we actually see both parents. Because, like, Ryan's mum's gone, and his dad's the only one around.
And yeah, Bill might have been a what's the term? Whatever. I always forget terms when I'm speaking out loud that I remember if I'm writing. But she might have just been spontaneously born from her mother for all the story.
Yeah, they never go into her family at all. So in a way, she kind of escapes that by virtue of
her
it.
mother in one episode, but not enough. Her mother doesn't have a name, but that's as far as they go.
Yeah.
They explain it a little more with Mickey, I think, in the books than they did in the episode.
Okay. Do you know if they were written by Russell or not?
It was, but in Mickey's case, the mother committed suicide. And the father suddenly found himself a single dad and just kept working longer and longer hours. And then eventually wound up working as an engineer on a cruise ship and just disappeared.
So that kind of sounds like implied suicide to me there.
But yeah, it seems to be that they always have the marriage that goes south.
Yeah.
Whereas
the only time we've had that with any parents that aren't, it was like Maria's parents.
Yeah, that's true. Maria did have the split up parents, and thank God, because her mother made Jackie look good.
I often think that Maria's family moved to DC just to get away from her mom.
Yeah. She was kind of a selfish bitch. I mean, seriously. But anyway, my beef has more to do with the episode than the politics behind it. So you establish from almost the first 5-10 minutes into the episode that if you drop the amulet, it undoes everything you did. It happens with Jacob. It happens with Ronnie. And then it happens again with Clyde's father. So how is it then when Clyde makes his wish for her to forget everything about aliens and the locket, and then chucks the locket into the water, it sticks?
To be fair, when it's inconsistent in a different way, because Jacob says to stop it. He tells the medallion thingy to stop it. it all stops and then he throws it away. Whereas the dad just kind of fights back against it, all the effects go away, and then he pulls it off, and then it like undoes
Yeah,
everything on its
I
own. It's kind of
I
inconsistent all
I
across
think
the
that
board.
scene with the father was meant to imply that he kind of like mentally fights with the spirit in the locket and then defeats it and then sends everything back to normal.
Hmm.
But I don't think they say that. I think it's just kind of
Yeah,
implied.
yeah,
But either way, he gets rid of the locket. She should suddenly remember. It's like,
Mhm.
yeah. I do forget. I know I've watched further along than this, but I do forget if it does ever come up, whether either his mum finds out again or if they address it at all. But yeah.
Talking about getting rid of the locket, I watched that wondering like, so like, does a shark pick it up and then just become like an uber predator at that
yeah,
point?
or,
Yeah.
Like,
does it get dredged up 20 years from now, and you have this problem all over again? It did seem to be a rather careless way of
like
discarding.
that could
Yeah.
literally be the start of an episode or something
Yeah,
anytime in the future.
the only thing that I could think of is that they left it like that for the potential to bring it back later, and then probably never did. Like
But
I'm unaware.
I, I was just kind of like, imagine if it lands on some sort of sea animal or they pick it up and all of a sudden they can control all the fish around them so they can eat any fish that they want and they just become a super predator.
The fattest shark in the universe.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it never just shows up again. So
My theory is
Hmm.
that one day we'll just hear Jumanji drums and then it'll just be there in the water, someone looking down at it.
Now, if we find out that it's in the next like Chibnall episode or something like that, that will be amazing. But I doubt that's going to
I would,
happen.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's been
Or,
considered forgotten at this point.
or like Big Finish Torchwood brings it up.
Actually, Big Finish would be a place that would probably bring it back eventually one day.
Yeah.
If they thought about it,
hmm
but
if they
you know,
can convince Luke's actor to come back.
or even just Clyde and
Or
Ronnie,
just Clyde too.
Yeah.
Mm.
because after
I mean,
all,
it
I think
wouldn't.
it was the last season or two, Luke went
Hmm.
off to college.
hmm
Yeah.
So yeah, they had some turnover in this cast.
And it's funny because I'm pretty sure it was always a case of they wanted to finish their education.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
So they just wrote them out.
But I mean, even like Doctor Who generally is, most companions are 1 to 2 years, and I think that I don't.
Hmm.
That's so it's not shocking that cast members lasted about that long for this.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of harder to turn over on something like this.
Right? Yeah, because Sarah Jane's not traveling.
They had turned over. They just killed the character, and then even then, that didn't stop him for a while.
That's why the Torchwood cast got so small that Big Finish was like, remember this guy who was never in Torchwood ever? We're bringing him in because we don't have enough cast members.
Yeah. Well, that was the problem. They kept dying, and they kept failing to replace them.
Until they had a season where just no one can die for the season, and that's how we keep everyone alive.
That's how we make sure no one's dying this season, except you can
And
get
of course,
horribly mangled.
That's the season that is least well remembered. I mean, least fondly remembered.
Yep. Anyway, favorite scene, Matt.
Favorite scene. There's a couple of good scenes. I'm just trying to think of which one I want to go with. You know what? I think I'll go with the memory flashbacks for Clive's dad, and finally he comes to his senses. The veins go back, and finally he's able to will himself to remove the amulet and tosses it. I wasn't sure how they were going to get him back, but basically reminding him who he really was before he became a berserker was actually a good idea. I felt it definitely matched with a lot of the other stuff going on with those characters for this particular story.
All right. Thomas?
I'm probably just gonna go with the basically how the episode ends with the with Clyde and Sarah Jane having a talk. Because it brings up something that's a start of, I would have to assume is potentially, or at least gives us the thing where it's like you can kind of see that it's the case where he just flat out says, you know, like, if it wasn't for you guys, I would probably be
Just like
a
him.
shit person. Yeah. Like, I would be a lot more like him, like, if it weren't for you guys. So it's like, you know, it's nice to actually acknowledge, despite the fact that this character's journey isn't completely over yet. And I'm pretty sure he was there until the end. I could be wrong, but the fact that
As far
it's
as I
like,
recall.
yeah,
Clyde was there till the end.
yeah,
Clyde
so
was
it's like,
the only kid that was there for the entire run.
oh wow.
And how long
So,
was it?
so really, the Sarah Jane Adventures is about Sarah and Clyde.
How long did this run? I think it was 3 or 4 seasons.
5
4
seasons, but
Was
the
it
final
5?
season was
Yeah.
3 episodes only.
So
Yeah,
that
because
does that make him the longest New Who companion?
most likely yes.
Let's see.
At least if you go by like individual episodes, maybe not, because
Right.
then again,
Yeah, because he has
like it maybe depend.
all
Let's see.
two-parters.
Yeah, everything's
Yeah.
a 2-parter except
But
for
years-wise, that might make him the longest companion, except for maybe K9.
he served from 2007 to 2011. So from basically Martha through to series 6.
Mm-hmm.
So roughly 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so it's 5 seasons. So
Yeah. 4.5
or
seasons.
4.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he had more episodes than anyone in New Who aside from probably Doctors that I can tell.
Oh, okay. So
'Cause he had like the first 4 series were all 12 episodes, but like 6 stories.
I was gonna say,
If
yeah,
you
'cause I
count
count Sarah.
if you count individual episodes, he had probably 51, if I'm thinking correctly. Probably
If you
not.
count individual episodes is. I feel like that's a bit more skewed, but it favors some eras more than others.
Well, yeah,
Or
but
we're
you know,
comparing it to current new or then current New Who.
it's hard to compare too, because you know, there's so many different ways to compare. Also, you got to go by screen time, which I'm not talking about. That I'm talking about the fact that these are half-hour episodes versus the 1-hour
Right.
episodes, and
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I feel. That's why I feel that the most balanced way is just by number of stories or number of seasons. But
either way, let's remove the stick and get back to what we're doing.
Yeah.
Um,
We're debating something that we debated all day.
so
we're just acknowledging something.
Matt, or no, Bill.
Yeah, I think it's out the bill at this point.
So our favorite scene.
Yes.
So I think I'm going to go with the scene where they realize that Clyde's father has the amulet. Where first he mind controls Ronnie's father, and then Ronnie shows up and is like, "What the fuck? You stole the mind control?" He's like, "No, I didn't steal the mind control." And it was a funny scene that was fitting of the tone of a Sarah Jane Adventures episode, but it also had the seriousness. It had, it moved the plot along. I just thought it was a very well balanced scene that kind of hit all the notes.
It was funny until it went dark.
Mm-hmm. And then even like 20 minutes later, you see that he's still doing push-ups on that sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
then
that's
it went
that. Yeah, that scene is really is where you just say, "Ooh, that escalated quickly."
Yeah.
It has notes of darkness, but it
Oh, it
doesn't
has
quite
severe
go
notes of
dark
darkness.
itself.
He in one scene
Oh
he
yeah, no, that's
brainwashes
right.
his.
That's right, because it ends with the like forget your
For,
mother.
yeah, forget your friends and your dad is still trapped, constantly doing push-ups right now. Bye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that
so
scene gets
it's all
super
in the
dark
notes.
fast.
And because it's lighter and funnier, my favorite scene is Clyde and his father obtain a Porsche.
You'll just go give it to me for free. I'll give it to you for free.
Mhm. Are you sure you can afford this? We have many payment options. I'll just take this one. I think that might be above your thing. Yeah, but you're going to give it to me. Okay.
Normally that'd be a no, but yeah, with the amulet.
Yep. And that's the point you realize that he's realizing that he could basically get whatever the fuck he wants.
Mm-hmm.
All right, least favorite scene.
Actually, the one I felt was really weird and made me raise my eyebrow a lot. It was yeah, the scene where his Clive's dad is doubling over and the vein thing is starting to happen to his face. I think that's supposed to be a special effect for like the veins showing up, but I particularly noticed that he seemed weirdly. It just seemed really weird, like he was on a green screen or something. And you could tell because the entire background has zero buildings, zero fences, even though he's right next to a fence. And the sky is a brilliant blue. And the moment you turn back to anybody else after that particular shot, it immediately goes back to gray sky. It's like, oh, it's sunny. Now it's not sunny. Are we gonna go back to sunny again? No.
Somebody
Either
had to
that, or
pick
it
up
was filmed
filming.
or it was filmed at a separate time.
Yeah, it seems like somebody didn't give notes to the digital editor for that particular sequence.
All right,
Oops.
Thomas.
I guess like some of the like once the sort of Berserker entity has fully taken over, like some of that acting, not all of it, but it's so this is basically a nitpick anyway, but just like some of the acting, it's sort of like last week where I complained that there was like that one bit where the actor in Secrets in of the Stars or whatever was like one bit where he went a bit too over the top to the point I was like, I don't know. I was with you before and after, but that one bit. Where this is a similar thing where some of it seemed like he was going a bit too over the top, and
I
as
didn't feel
far
as
as
much
it
this week, but
went,
it could be just that it hit you in a particular odd note. I don't know.
well, yeah, as I said, it's a nitpicky thing. It's not like a
Mm-hmm.
major thing, and it's only like a couple bits here and there where it seems like it was a bit more
I would like
subdued. I
to
could kind of get it.
tack mine onto this because I had the same thing. Only the reason was that it was like flipping a switch. Suddenly he starts talking about him as my soldier and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been nice to see that bleed through a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
Like he would have said it and Clyde would have gone, "What?" and he would have corrected himself.
Mm-hmm. That would have
Instead
also been really good for that kid before the amulet went to Ronnie when he was similarly like being taken over by it.
Actually, what also would have helped it too is maybe if the whispering of the amulet actually had actual words to it
Mm-hmm.
instead of just whispery hissing. Maybe if it was actually saying certain things and like the word soldier would come up every once in a while.
Right.
Something like that. It just kind of felt like
Just something to hint to it before it got there. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Bill.
So that leaves Bill, yeah.
So I'm going to go with the scene when Clyde is just like casually mentioning that he could like enslave his parents and force them to get back together and to forget when they fight. Just like, yeah, they handle it well, but I feel like he should have seen enough by that point, not even to like to know that it was too awful to bring up. And it
Yeah.
just kind of rubbed me the wrong way that he would even think about it.
Mm.
You almost want that doctor with the key to time moment where he's saying this and they're just like, "Are you okay?" "Of course I am, but what if I wasn't?" You know?
It's like Sarah Jane not 5 minutes ago trusted you enough to leave you with it. That probably wasn't because she thought you
Well,
were
I
the
don't.
type of person
I
who would
honestly,
think
I
like
don't
that.
take that as a note of seriousness from him either. Like it's just a thought that he's not going to act dumb because he understands that
Yeah.
there's going to be issues.
Like, yeah, I don't think it was a matter of he was seriously considering it. It was more
No, but
like
he thought
he's
about it
he's
enough to actually say it out loud, and that bothered me.
Mm.
But, like, I basically take it as it's Clyde being Clyde and is trying to diffuse the tension, but doesn't, being
That
a
doesn't always
kid,
work
he doesn't.
being
Yeah.
Clyde. Yeah.
I think it was more along the lines of hypothetically.
Like I wanted Sarah Jane to smack him upside the head just for mentioning it.
I mean, again, like the reason it doesn't bother me is because the parents immediately shoot it down. Like that wouldn't
Right.
it would be the same
Yeah,
thing.
and that's why it doesn't bother me as much as it would have otherwise. Like they handle it well, but it frustrated me that he would even bring it up.
Mm.
I can see why though. As somebody who, my parents divorced when I was a young kid, that temptation to have your family back is always there.
Yeah.
They have things the way that you would always thought they should have been. Yeah. Especially tempting for kids because sometimes it's a bit much.
And, much like Clyde's family, it wouldn't have worked for my family either.
Probably not.
Well, especially since my father decided he liked men instead of women. That is kind of a detrimental for getting your mother and father back together.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty
Say
much.
it. Anyway, I think that's everybody, so we can move on to final thoughts. Matt?
Final thoughts. I have to say there's a lot to ground that this particular episode covers. The story's pretty good. There's definitely some messages to pick up with when it comes to like people dealing with family issues and so forth. The visuals were really well done. The tension is way more there than it was last week. Also, getting to know Clive's family and getting to know a lot more about his actual background and why it does reveal layers as to why he is the way he is sometimes. So there's a lot to I think to actually really like about this episode. And that's my thoughts.
Okay. Thomas?
Yeah, this is definitely one that for me, I honestly I don't remember what year I originally watched this, but this was something that I've now seen like 3 times. And this still holds up for the most part for me. I think it's generally because one thing the show does better is the more personal stakes rather than something like Secrets of the Stars, where it was a lot more just here's this omnipotent force that you've got to deal with. This is a lot more personal. And it's a lot it always has a high hit rate when it goes for that, especially with what comes next. The episode of with Sarah Jane. And all the fuckery that goes on in that next one. But yeah. I would definitely say this is worth watching. I could very easily see myself watching this again in my own time. It kind of sucks that it's pretty much always the black companion-y characters that end up with essentially broken homes and shit, but at the very least I still think this episode was well handled for the most part.
All right. Bill?
Okay. So yeah, I would say this was a pretty good episode. I kind of wonder if they had meant for the Berserker to ever like take a more physical form and then just either couldn't or decided not to. But I think it kind of worked the way it was, although it was a little difficult trying to come up with an opening sting when there was only, one new character and one guest character, and most of the photos were just of the same people. Um, but I think it was good overall. It hit a lot of important emotional notes that I think, especially for a kids show, I think a lot of kids might have needed to see something like this. So I can really give them props for that. Some things I think were a little iffy, but I think there definitely was more good than bad.
All right. Is that everything?
Yeah, I think so.
So this episode hits pretty deep. It touches on some things that, you wouldn't get much of outside of a very special Blossom, but it does it in the context of the show instead of kind of force inserting it like those shows kind of did. And still winds up being entertaining. It goes dark in some places, and it's a personal dark as opposed to the cheesy threat dark, and that's good. I do think it needed a little bit more continuity writing, but not much. It was almost completed. And the acting is pretty well done. The special effects are great. Yeah, this is a very good episode. Let's rate it and see what we think. Matt, you are first.
Oh, there's not enough for me to not like about this episode. I honestly have to say I'm giving this one a 5.
Thomas.
Basically, I'm thinking whether I like this more than Day of the Clown or if I think it's on par with it. Honestly, yeah, I'd say the personal stakes drive it a bit higher for me. So yeah, I'll agree with Matt and give it a 5.
Bill, our eternal critic.
I don't think it's so much that I'm negative that you guys are just over the top positive. I really
Wow,
like it,
really, Bill?
I really like it, but I don't think it had that rare magic to really like that those few five out of 5 episodes have. My last 5 was Meglos, and I was the only 5 on that. So I'm like, do I like this less? Do I like this more or less than Meglos? And it's tough, but I do think I'm giving it a 4.5. I don't think it quite merits that over the border.
And I agree with Bill. I'm giving it a 4.5. Like I said, there's a couple things it could do a little bit better, but I have to give it bonus because of no clowns. So yeah, 4.5, which will average this out to a 4.8, making Matt and Thomas closest to the correct.
Oh.
4.8 will put it.
Just because of the way Sheets rounds it, it's literally halfway between the scores. So literally, one side is more right than the other.
It's actually rounded up.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Sheets rounded it up from 4.75 to 4.8.
So it will come in at number 29, or excuse me, number 27 out of 390 things reviewed. Or that, out of 377 things reviewed. I'm sorry, my bad. It is on par with I don't think we have any Sarah Jane Adventures that high.
Nope.
Oh.
Well, we have one higher, but
We
it's a
have
bit
one higher.
further higher.
Yeah. I need to check our. Okay.
We have the nearest is a 4.7 with whatever happened to Sarah Jane.
Yeah, which
Hmm.
makes it better than whatever happened to Sarah Jane, and not as good as The Lost Boy.
Yeah, which had a perfect score.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So there we go.
They're trying again. Not quite there though.
27 out of 377 things reviewed. That is all we have to say about the Mark of the Berserker.
All right, so please let us know in the comments what you think about the episode. Don't forget to like or dislike the the video, depending on how you feel. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to get our new exports on YouTube every week, or follow us on Twitch to see our new streams every Wednesday night.
All right. So next week, it is back to Doctor Who as we turn our heads to the 11th Doctor. It's time for us to finish up Series 5, starting with Amy's Choice. Written by Simon Nye and starring Matt Smith as the Doctor, Karen Gillan as Amy Pond, and Arthur Darvill as Rory Williams. So tune into that next week.
See you all then.